There's a certain kind of quiet that follows people who've been misunderstood for too long. It's not the silence of apathy, but the silence of someone who once spoke freely and was met with absence. Someone who once reached out with warmth, only to find their palms closing around air. If you've ever felt that ache, the one that hums softly beneath your ribs when you choose solitude over explanation, you might have wondered if you've grown cold. But what if this distance you feel isn't detachment? What if it's protection? The way the mind learns to keep you safe when the heart has been stretched too thin. You wake up one morning and notice how the light spills through the window, gentle but unfamiliar. You realize you've been watching the world from behind glass, present, yet slightly apart. You smile when spoken to, laugh when expected, but inside there's a quiet observer taking notes. It's not that you don't care. It's that you've learned how to care cautiously. Your nervous system, somewhere deep in its ancient wisdom, whispers, "Wait. Let's see if it's safe first." Psychologists call this adaptive self-protection. When your brain associates vulnerability with pain, perhaps from rejection, betrayal, or emotional neglect, it engages the amygdala, the almond-shaped structure in your brain responsible for detecting threats. The amygdala doesn't distinguish between emotional and physical danger. It just senses risk. So when you feel yourself pulling back, hesitating to open up, that's not coldness. It's your brain saying, "We've been hurt here before. Let's tread carefully." And that's the first sign. You pause before connecting, not because you're cold, but because your mind is scanning for safety. You might notice yourself analyzing people's tone, body language, or timing. You replay conversations later, searching for hidden meanings. You crave connection, yet your body carries memories that whisper. Connection isn't always safe. And so you hold yourself at arm's length, not to reject love, but to ensure it won't cost you too much. Imagine this scene. You're at a cafe with friends, laughter spilling around the table. Someone teases you lightly, and though you know it's harmless, your chest tightens for a split second. You smile, but your nervous system flickers like a dim light. Is it safe? The tension passes, but you feel a faint echo of the past. A time when teasing wasn't kind, when laughter carried an edge. That's your amygdala remembering. Not to punish you but to protect you. It's saying, "I've seen this before." You don't have to fight that. You can acknowledge it, breathe through it, and remind yourself softly. This moment is new. The second sign appears in the way you manage your emotions. You don't always show what you feel, not because you lack feeling, but because you've learned that expressing it can sometimes backfire. Maybe you once opened up to someone who said you were too much. Maybe you cried and were told to toughen up. Maybe your vulnerability was met with silence instead of comfort. Over time, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for self-control, became your emotional gatekeeper. It learned to filter, to manage, to conceal. You became the person who says, "I'm fine," even when your stomach twists. You mastered the art of appearing composed. But beneath that calm exterior, emotions still flow. They don't vanish. They simply move underground, like a river beneath stone. And sometimes when you're alone, when the world finally quiets, you feel them rushing up, unfiltered. The tears come easily then, or not at all. You might feel numb, not because you're unfeeling, but because your mind has turned down the volume for survival. Neuroscientists call this emotional blunting. It's your brain's way of preventing overwhelm by muting the intensity of emotional experience. Yet even in numbness, there is intelligence. Your system is saying, "Let's rest. Let's regulate." Emotional numbness is not a flaw. It's a pause. A protective mechanism giving your body a moment to breathe between storms. Picture yourself standing in front of a mirror late at night, the soft hum of the world behind you. You catch your reflection and think, "I used to feel everything so deeply." You miss that version of yourself, the one who laughed loudly, loved recklessly, cried without apology. You wonder if you've lost something essential. But maybe you haven't lost anything at all. Maybe you've just built a shelter around what's sacred. The third sign is your discomfort with unpredictability. You crave peace, stability, and control. Not out of arrogance, but because unpredictability once meant pain. Maybe someone in your past was emotionally inconsistent. Warm one day, distant the next. Maybe you grew up walking on eggshells, learning to read moods like weather patterns. Your nervous system became hyper-attuned to the slightest shift in tone, the faintest sigh. You learned to adapt, to anticipate, to fix. This pattern often leads to what psychologists call hypervigilance. It's the heightened state of alertness that develops when safety once depended on awareness. The body remains ready, even in calm environments. The heart beats faster at sudden noises. You flinch at raised voices, even if they're playful. You find it hard to relax in unfamiliar settings because part of you is always scanning for what could go wrong. But again, this isn't cold. It's competence. It's the mind of someone who has learned survival through observation. Your sensitivity is not a weakness. It's a superpower that needs rest. You don't have to turn it off. You just have to teach it that the present moment is not the past. Imagine sitting with someone who truly listens. Someone whose presence feels steady, whose gaze doesn't rush you. You might notice your breath slow down. Your shoulders drop slightly. Your nervous system, finally, begins to exhale. That's what safety feels like. That's what allows your protective layers to loosen, not disappear, but soften. The fourth sign is your independence. Fierce, quiet, beautiful. You've learned to rely on yourself because it feels safer than relying on others. There's pride in that, but also loneliness. You're the person people call when they need something, the one who rarely asks in return. You might tell yourself you prefer it that way, but deep down, there's a yearning for mutual care. You want to rest. You want someone to notice when you're tired without you having to explain. Psychologists describe this as self-sufficiency armor. It's the protective identity we create to shield against disappointment. The belief goes something like, if I don't need anyone, I can't be let down. But this armor, while strong, also limits connection. Genuine intimacy requires interdependence, a balance of giving and receiving. And that's hard for those who've been hurt, because dependency once felt like danger. Yet beneath that armor lives the same soft heart that once believed in people. You might find glimpses of it when you care for a plant, when you hold a pet close, when you write something vulnerable that no one else will read. Those moments reveal your emotional truth. You haven't stopped feeling. You've simply learned where it feels safe to feel. The fifth sign is your tendency to retreat when things get too close. You might meet someone kind, and still, something inside you pulls back. You start analyzing their motives, doubting their sincerity, rehearsing exit strategies. Not because you don't like them, but because the closer they get, the more your system anticipates loss. The brain, ever pragmatic, recalls every instance where closeness preceded pain, and decides, maybe distance is safer. This is known in attachment theory as avoidant coping. It's a learned strategy developed when vulnerability wasn't met with reassurance. Children who grow up with inconsistent emotional care often internalize the belief that needing others leads to disappointment. As adults, they might appear self-contained or aloof, but inside, they long for connection. It's not absence of love, it's the fear of its impermanence. And here's where compassion becomes medicine. When you catch yourself retreating, pause and say softly, it's okay to want space. It's okay to need safety. But I don't have to disappear to feel protected. You can hold both truths, the need for closeness and the need for safety. Healing isn't about swinging from one extreme to another. It's about learning to inhabit the in-between with grace. The sixth sign is your deep empathy that no one sees. Ironically, those who seem cold often feel the most. You might find yourself crying over a movie, aching at strangers' pain, caring deeply in silence. Empaths who've been hurt often hide their empathy, fearing it'll be taken advantage of again. You care so much that you've learned to disguise it as indifference. But your sensitivity leaks through. In the way you remember tiny details, in the way you sense tension before words are spoken, in the way you withdraw not out of disdain, but out of overwhelm. Neuroscience tells us that empathy activates the anterior insula and the mirror neuron system, the same regions involved in experiencing our own emotions. When you see someone in pain, your brain literally simulates their distress. That's why you tire easily in chaotic environments or after emotional conversations. Your body absorbs what others release. So when you protect yourself through solitude, you're not being selfish. You're regulating. You're allowing your system to reset, to differentiate between their feelings and yours. You might sit in your room some evenings, wrapped in quiet, feeling both full and empty. You replay moments of connection, wondering if people notice the small ways you show care, the texts you send, the smiles you offer, the silence you hold without judgment. They may not always see it, but your warmth exists in subtleties. It doesn't need to be loud to be real. If you look closely, You'll notice how each of these signs connects to love. The pause before opening up. The silence after being hurt. The need for control. The independence that shields from disappointment. The retreat before intimacy. The empathy that hides in plain sight. None of these are signs of a cold heart. They're the fingerprints of someone who's been through emotional weather and learned to build shelter wisely. The story of emotional protection is not one of absence. It's one of adaptation. The human brain, in all its complexity, doesn't just process experience. It learns from it. When you felt unsafe, your nervous system adapted. When you were dismissed, your self-expression recalibrated. When love hurts, your attachment patterns rewire to preserve you. Every defense you built once served a purpose. Healing doesn't mean tearing them down all at once. It means thanking them before gently setting them aside. Imagine walking through a dim forest at dawn. The air is cool, the world hushed. You see an old cabin ahead, your emotional defenses personified. Its walls are sturdy, its windows small, its door always half closed. You built it when storms were frequent, when shelter meant survival. And now, standing outside, you realize the sky has cleared. The storms aren't as fierce as they used to be. You can still keep the cabin, but maybe you don't need to live inside it anymore. Maybe you can step out sometimes. Feel the sun, breathe the air, let the world in slowly. In psychology, this process is called earned security. It's the gradual rewiring of attachment through safe, consistent experiences. Within relationships, therapy, or even self-compassion. It means you can move from protection to connection, not by forcing vulnerability, but by allowing safety to accumulate. You start small, letting someone comfort you without deflecting, sharing a thought you'd usually swallow, saying, "I need help," without apology. Each act signals to your nervous system. See? We can survive this. We can trust this. Healing doesn't always look cinematic. Sometimes it's mundane, answering a message instead of ghosting, accepting a compliment without downplaying it, taking a deep breath before assuming rejection. These are the micro moments where the brain begins to learn that not every openness leads to pain. With repetition, your amygdala quiets, your prefrontal cortex strengthens its regulation, and the body relearns ease. You might wonder, will I ever feel as open as I used to? The truth is, you may not return to the same openness, but you'll cultivate something deeper. Conscious openness. The kind that knows how to discern. That understands the difference between guarding and grounding. That loves without abandoning itself. That gives without depletion. There's a quote by psychologist Carl Rogers that says, "When someone truly hears you without passing judgment on you, without trying to take responsibility for you, without trying to mold you, it feels damn good." That feeling of being heard, seen, and allowed is what your nervous system has been craving. It's what softens your defenses not through logic, but through safety. So the next time you catch yourself pulling back, don't rush to fix it. Instead, place a hand on your chest and whisper, "I see why you're protecting me." That moment of self-recognition is healing in motion. You're transforming what was once an unconscious reaction into conscious care. You're no longer fighting your defenses. You're understanding them. In neuroscience, this is the shift from reactivity to response. Reactivity happens when the amygdala takes the wheel. Fast, instinctive, protective. Response happens when the prefrontal cortex re-engages, bringing perspective and compassion. It's when you realize, I'm not my fear. I'm the awareness behind it. Let's revisit those 6 signs, this time, not as warnings, but as wisdom. 1. You pause before connecting. That pause is emotional intelligence, a natural boundary that invites you to choose safety. 2. You hide your feelings. That restraint was once survival. Now it can become discernment, knowing when and where your truth is safe. 3. You crave control. That need once protected you from chaos. Now, it can guide you toward creating environments where your nervous system thrives. 4. You're fiercely independent. That strength kept you afloat. Now, it can evolve into balanced interdependence, trusting yourself while letting others support you. 5. You retreat when closeness feels scary. That retreat once shielded your heart. Now, it can remind you to approach love mindfully, with awareness instead of fear. 6. You feel deeply, even if no one sees it. That depth is your quiet superpower, the proof that your warmth never left. It simply went inward to heal. You see, There's no shame in being protective. The mind is always doing its best with what it knows. When safety becomes consistent, when kindness becomes familiar, the brain rewires, the heart reopens, the body remembers ease. Perhaps one evening, you'll sit by a window as rain begins to fall. You'll feel that familiar tug of solitude, that instinct to retreat into thought. But this time, instead of resisting, you'll smile softly. You'll understand that your distance isn't coldness. It's your body's way of loving you, of saying, let's stay safe until it feels right. And maybe you'll whisper back, thank you. We're safe now. Slowly, you'll begin to live from that awareness. You'll find that you can hold contradictions, the longing for closeness and the need for space, the love for others and the loyalty to yourself. You'll see that you were never broken. You were adapting. Never cold. You were conserving warmth. And one day, without even realizing it, you'll laugh again. Not the polite kind, but the kind that bubbles up from somewhere deep. You'll trust a little more, rest a little easier, breathe a little deeper. You'll look at your reflection and see not detachment, but peace. Because this is what healing often looks like. Not dramatic transformation, but gentle return. Not the erasure of defense, but the evolution of it. You don't have to become someone new. You're simply becoming more yourself. The truth is that warmth doesn't vanish. It waits. Beneath every quiet withdrawal, every thoughtful silence, every steady gaze, warmth waits to be met with safety. You are not cold. You are cautious. You are learning to love from wisdom, not fear. And maybe that's the most beautiful kind of love there is.